The moment Eligia's 4-year-old twins looked up at the most dangerous man in the kingdom and declared, "You have our eyes," her carefully constructed world began to crumble. For 5 years she'd hidden in the shadow of the northern mountains, building a life where no one asked questions about the children who could shift before they could walk. What Eligia didn't know was that the mate bond she thought she'd escaped had never truly broken, and the king she'd fled from had spent every day searching for the woman who disappeared with his heart. But the real danger was only just beginning. The Greystone Market was particularly crowded that morning, which was exactly why Eligia had chosen it. Crowds meant anonymity. Crowds meant she could slip between the stalls, buy what she needed, and disappear before anyone took too much notice of her twins. She should have known better. "Mama, look." Evander's voice rang out clear as a bell, too loud, too excited. "That man has eyes like us." Eligia's blood turned to ice. She spun around to find her son pointing at a figure near the leather goods stall. The man was tall, powerfully built, dressed in dark traveling leathers that whispered wealth and authority even without any obvious insignia. His hair was the color of wheat in summer, falling just past his collar, and when he turned at Evander's exclamation, Eligia's breath stopped in her chest. Amber eyes. That particular shade of gold-flecked amber that was so rare it marked only the oldest bloodlines, the same shade, currently gleaming in her children's faces as they stared at the stranger with unabashed fascination. The same shade she saw every time she closed her eyes and remembered a night 5 years ago that had changed everything. "Evander!" "Hush," Eligia hissed, grabbing for her son's hand. But Celine was already tugging free, her small face scrunched in concentration as she studied the stranger. "He does have our eyes," Celine announced, as if this were a remarkable scientific discovery, "and his hair is like ours too, but his is lighter. Like honey instead of butter." The stranger, no, not a stranger, Eligia's traitorous heart whispered, "You know exactly who he is," went very still. His gaze moved from the twins to Eligia, and she watched recognition flicker across his features. Not the sharp clarity of remembering, but something hazier, uncertain, like trying to recall a dream that slipped away upon waking. Alpha King Valeries tilted his head slightly, studying Eligia with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Have we met?" The question was casual enough, but Eligia heard the edge beneath it. The suspicion, and worse, the pull. That same inexorable magnetism that had drawn them together 5 years ago at a treaty gathering, when she'd been nobody and he'd been engaged to someone far more suitable. "I don't think so, Your Majesty," Eligia said, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. She dropped into a hasty curtsy, yanking both twins down with her. "Just passing through. We should. Your children." Valeries's voice had gone quieter, more dangerous. "How old are they?" Celine, bless her brilliant, terrible timing, piped up before Eligia could deflect. "Wherefore?" "Well, 4.5. Our birthday was in spring when the flowers came back." Eligia watched Valeries do the math, watched his expression shift from curious to calculating. His eyes swept over the twins again, taking in not just their coloring but the way they held themselves. The confidence in their posture that shouldn't exist in children so young. The way they looked at him without the slightest hint of submission, even though alpha dominance radiated from him like heat from a forge. "What are your names?" Valeries asked, crouching down. The movement was fluid, controlled, and put him at eye level with Evander and Celine. "I'm Evander." Her son stepped forward without hesitation, extending his small hand like he'd seen merchants do. "And this is my sister Celine. We're twins, but not the same kind. Mama says we're fraternal." He sounded out the word carefully, proud of getting it right. Valerie shook Evander's hand with complete seriousness, and Eligia's heart cracked a little at the sight. "It's an honor to meet you both. I'm the Alpha King." Celine finished, her amber eyes wide. "Evander made me practice saying your whole name in case we ever met you. He made me say it 20 times. She paused, considering. "Do you really turn into a wolf as big as a horse?" Celine, Eligia's face heated. "That's enough, we need to go. I'm sure His Majesty has important." "Actually," Valerie said, rising to his full height without breaking eye contact with Eligia. "I'd like to speak with you privately." Eligia's pulse hammered. "With respect, Your Majesty, I don't think we have anything to discuss. Your children just announced to half the market that they have my eyes. And amber eyes like these," his voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears, "they don't just happen. You know that as well as I do. And when I look at you, I feel..." He trailed off, frustration flickering across his features. "I feel like I'm forgetting something important. Something I should remember. Because you are..." Eligia thought desperately. Out loud she said, "I'm sure it's just a coincidence, Your Majesty. Before we continue, please take a second to like this video, It tells me you want more stories like this. I don't believe in coincidences. Valerie's hand lifted almost unconsciously toward Delicia's face, then he froze, seeming to catch himself. His fingers curled into a fist and dropped. The Silver Pine Inn. In 1 hour we'll talk there. And if I refuse? His composure cracked just for a moment, not anger, but something raw, almost pleading. Then I'll wonder for the rest of my life why you felt so familiar. Why looking at you makes my chest ache. He paused. Please. That single word undid her. Because she remembered him saying it before, 5 years ago, when he'd cupped her face and whispered, "Please tell me you feel this too." 1 hour, Alicia heard herself say. But the children stay with me. Of course. Valerie's gaze dropped to the twins again, and Alicia saw naked longing flash across his face before he shuddered it. Mama, Celine's small voice wobbled. Your hands are shaking. Did we do something wrong? I'm sorry, Evander whispered, pressing against her side. I didn't know pointing was rude. I won't do it again, I promise. Oh, sweethearts. Alicia's throat tightened as she knelt down, gathering them both into her arms. No, you didn't do anything wrong, I promise. But I did, she thought. 5 years ago I made a choice, and now it's coming back to destroy us. The Silver Pine Inn was too nice for a border town like Greystone. Its presence spoke of money flowing through on the trade routes of merchants who wanted comfort during their journeys north. Alicia had never set foot inside before, couldn't afford to, and didn't want to draw attention by trying. Now she stood in the doorway of a private room on the 2nd floor, her twins flanking her, and wondered if she was walking into a trap of her own making. Valerie stood by the window, backlit by afternoon sun. He'd removed his cloak, and the simple shirt and trousers he wore did nothing to diminish his presence. If anything, they made him more devastating. She could see the breadth of his shoulders, the lean strength in his frame, could see the leather cord around his neck that disappeared beneath his collar. Her breath caught. She knew that cord. She'd braided it herself in the Faird and Arkness after their night together. Her fingers, clumsy with emotion, had threaded a small silver wolf charm onto it, the only thing of value she owned, and pressed it into his hand as the sun rose. A silly, hopeless gift from a woman who'd known she had no right to mark him, but couldn't bear to leave without giving him something. He still wore it. Thank you for coming, Valerie said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. You're the Alpha King. Refusing seemed unwise. Alicia kept her voice neutral, but her hands betrayed her, smoothing down Celine's hair repeatedly. I'm not here as the king. Valerie's eyes found hers. I'm here as a man who's been searching for something he can't quite name. And I think you might be the answer. Before Alicia could respond, Evander squirmed free and darted across the room. To her horror, Evander made a beeline for Valerie's and climbed straight into his lap as he sank into a chair by the fire. You smell like pine trees, Evander announced, making himself comfortable. His excitement was palpable, practically vibrating through his small body. That's my favorite smell. Mama says I like it because we used to live near the big forest. Valerie's arms came around Evander automatically, steadying him. Alicia watched his expression transform, confusion giving way to wonder, then to something that looked dangerously like joy. The northern pine forests? Valerie's asked, his voice slightly rough. Yeah, Evander bounced in his lap, and Alicia's heart stopped as she caught the flicker, just a flash of wolf ears appearing on her son's head before vanishing again. The partial shift happened so fast, barely a second, that she desperately hoped Valerie's had been looking elsewhere. But when his eyes lifted to hers, sharp and knowing, she knew he'd seen it. Evander tilted his head back to look up at Valerie's, blissfully unaware of what he'd just revealed. Can you shift? Mama says we're not supposed to until we rolled her. But I bet you can do it anywhere. Evander, don't pester His Majesty, Alicia started. He's not pestering me. Valerie's hand settled on Evander's blonde hair. And yes, I can shift, but it's not polite to do it indoors. It tends to break furniture. Celine, not to be outdone, approached more cautiously. She stopped just in front of Valerie's, studying him with those two perceptive amber eyes. Evander's right. You do smell like pine trees. She tilted her head. But also like something else. What else does it smell like to you? Valerie's asked, his voice careful. Celine bit her lip, suddenly shy. Her fingers twisted in her skirt before she reached out to touch his hand where it rested on the chair arm. Like home, she whispered. Why does it smell like home when we just met you? Alicia watched Valerie's go absolutely still, watched his eyes widen as Celine's small fingers curled around his. I don't know, he said softly. But I feel the same way about you. About both of you. His gaze lifted to Alicia. About all three of you. The air in the room grew thick. Alicia felt the pull intensify, that invisible thread that had connected them from the first moment their eyes met 5 years ago. The bond she tried so hard to deny, to run from, to pretend didn't exist. Mama gets sad when she looks at the moon, Celine continued, oblivious to the adult's tension. Do you get sad too? Celine, Alicia's voice cracked. Yes, Valerie's answered before Alicia could redirect. I do. Every full moon, I feel like I've lost something precious, but I can't remember what. Evander twisted in his lap, excited now. Maybe you lost the same thing as Mama. Maybe you could help each other find it. The innocence in his voice nearly broke Alicia. Her twins had no idea they were the lost thing, the precious thing that had been hidden and protected and kept secret. Evander, Celine, why don't you go look out the window, Alicia managed. See if you can spot the merchant with the honey cakes from earlier. But Mama, now please. Something in her tone must have penetrated because the twins started to scramble down. But Evander was moving too fast, losing his balance as he climbed off Valerie's lap. Alicia lunged forward on instinct, her hand shooting out to steady her son. She met warm-skinned Valerie's fingers beneath hers on Evander's back. The contact lasted barely a second, but she saw Valerie's inhale sharply, his entire body going rigid. Alicia snatched her hand back like she'd been burned, gathering Evander close and ushering both twins toward the far window. They went reluctantly, whispering to each other. When Alicia turned back, Valerie's was staring at his hand. Then his eyes lifted to hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. They're mine, he said. Not a question, a statement of absolute certainty. I don't know what you... Don't. His voice was gentle but firm. Please don't lie to me. He stood, moving toward her with that predator's grace. Evander's ears shifted when he climbed into my lap. Just for a second, but I saw it. And I can feel Celine's emotions rolling off her in waves. They're for years old, Alicia. Children don't develop those abilities until 6 at the earliest. Unless they carry royal bloodline magic. That doesn't mean. And when you touched my hand just now, I saw something. Valerie's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. A memory. Not mine. Or it shouldn't be mine because I don't remember it. But I saw you laughing under starlight. Your hair loose and longer than it is now, wearing a blue dress. And I felt, his hand pressed against his chest, his breath unsteady. I felt the mate bond snap into place like a chain wrapping around my heart. Alicia's vision blurred. You need to stop. I can't. He moved closer and she could smell pine and winter air, and something uniquely him. A scent that made her want to close her eyes and breathe deep. Because I've been having dreams. A woman singing a lullaby about starlight. A meadow full of blue flowers. A cabin with a red door. And I wake up aching for something I can't name. Alicia's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him to forget this conversation, to let her and the twins disappear back into obscurity. But the words wouldn't come. Tell me I'm wrong. Valerie's hand lifted, hovering near her cheek without quite touching. Tell me you don't feel this. That you don't know exactly what I'm talking about. From the window, Celine's clear voice cut through the tension. Mama sings that song. The one about the starlight. She sings it every night before bed. Alicia watched Valerie's go perfectly still, watched understanding dawn across his features like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. I hear that song in my dreams, he said hoarsely. Every night I hear you singing it. His eyes searched hers desperately. How is that possible? How can I dream of you when I don't remember you? The bond, Alicia heard herself say. Made bonds create connections. Dream sharing sometimes. Even when one person doesn't remember. Then it's true. You're my mate. His voice broke on the last word. And they're my children. But someone made me forget you. It wasn't a question, but Alicia nodded anyway, felt tears slip down her cheeks as 5 years of secrets came crashing down. Why? The anguish in Valerie's voice cut through her. Why would you let me forget? Why would you run to protect them? To protect all of us? Alicia's voice was steadier than she felt. From what? From your fiancé who swore she'd kill any bastard threats to her claim on your throne. The words came out sharp, bitter. From a political marriage you needed to secure your crown. From being the weakness your enemies would exploit. Valerie staggered back like she'd struck him. Lady Ravina. Something shifted in his expression, memory trying to surface through fog. I broke off the engagement. It was sudden. Everyone said I was making a mistake, but I couldn't. His eyes widened. It was 3 months after the treaty gathering. 3 months after you. Alicia's breath left her in a rush. You broke it off. I did. I told everyone the match wasn't suitable. Valerie's ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I didn't know why. Couldn't explain it. Just knew I couldn't marry her. That something was wrong, that I was missing something crucial. His eyes locked on hers. That was you. I was missing you. Even without the memories, some part of me knew. Valerie's. Tell me, his voice turned commanding. Tell me what happened. All of it. So Alicia did. She told him about the treaty gathering 5 years ago where she'd been part of her pack's delegation, a nobody Omega barely worth noticing. She told him about the mate bond that had struck like lightning the moment their eyes met across the great hall. How they'd both felt it, both been helpless against its pull. I was carrying wine, Alicia said quietly, her gaze going distant. Moving through the crowd, trying to stay invisible. And then you looked at me. The goblet nearly slipped from my hands. Across the great hall, through hundreds of bodies and conversations, the Alpha King's eyes found hers. Amber meeting amber, and the world caught fire. The mate bond didn't ease into existence, it crashed over her like a wave, stealing her breath and her sense and every rational thought she'd ever had. She felt it in her chest, her bones, her soul. Felt it wrap around her heart and pull. One moment she was nobody, the next, she was his. He moved through the crowd like it didn't exist, his gaze never leaving hers. When he reached her, he took the goblet from her shaking hands and set it aside. Tell me you feel it too, he'd said, his voice rough with wonder. Please tell me I'm not losing my mind. I feel it, Alicia had whispered. I feel everything. He'd pulled her into a side corridor, then another, until they were alone in a moonlit garden. And then his mouth was on hers, and nothing else mattered. Not his engagement, not her low status, not the impossibility of it all. I'll find a way, he'd sworn against her lips hours later, when the sky was starting to lighten. I'll break the engagement. We'll figure this out together. We had one night, Alicia continued, her voice thick with the weight of memory. You gave me your oath, said you'd never let me go. What happened? Valerie's hands had clenched into fists at his sides, and she could see him fighting to remember, reaching for something just out of grasp. I woke up the next morning and you were different. Distant. Like you didn't quite recognize me. Alicia wrapped her arms around herself. Your guards escorted me out. And that afternoon, I overheard Lady Ravina talking to her mage. She was laughing about how easy the enchantment had been, how you'd wake with no memory of the little Omega who tried to trap you. She watched him process this, watched fury bloom across his features. And then she said, if any bastards turned up claiming to be yours, she'd have them killed before they drew their first breath. That she wouldn't let some accident ruin her plans. Alicia's voice hardened. 3 weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. So I ran. You should have come to me, Valerie said hoarsely. You? Should have come to you, the man who didn't remember me? Alicia's voice cracked. The Alpha King who was engaged to a woman powerful enough to have a mage alter your memories. What exactly should I have said, Valerie's? Excuse me, your majesty. But we had a magical one-night stand you don't recall, and now I'm carrying your twins. Please protect us from your fiancé who wants us dead. Yes, the word came out raw, almost desperate. Exactly that. And if you thought I was lying? If Ravina had convinced you I was just another Omega trying to trap you into a claim? Alicia shook her head. I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk my babies. Our babies. Valerie's voice dropped to something raw. They're ours, Alicia. And I've missed for years of their lives because someone took you from me. Because someone made me forget the most important thing that ever happened to me. He moved then, closing the distance between them. His hands framed her face with such gentleness that Alicia felt the loneliness she'd carried start to crack and fall away. I forgot your face, he whispered, but I never forgot how you made me feel. I've been searching for that feeling ever since. Chasing shadows and dreams and the memory of starlight, not knowing I was searching for you. Alicia's breath hitched. Valerie's. I called off the wedding because something inside me knew you existed. Knew I couldn't pledge myself to someone else when my soul belonged to you. His thumb brushed away her tears. I'm so sorry I don't remember. But I'm here now. And I swear to you, on everything I am, I will keep you safe. All three of you. You can't promise that. Watch me. Then his lips were on hers, and the world narrowed to just this. His mouth, his hands, the way he tasted like memory and promise all at once. The kiss started gentle, careful, like he was relearning something precious he'd lost. But when Alicia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, Valerie's control shattered. The kiss turned hungry, desperate. 5 years of searching and longing and half-remembered dreams poured between them. Alicia felt the mate bond surge to life, not the muted whisper she'd lived with, but the full roar of it, complete and consuming and utterly right. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Valerie's pressed his forehead to hers. "I've been with you every night," he murmured. "In dreams. Some part of me never let you go. I know." Alicia's throat was tight. "I felt you too. Every full moon, the anniversary of the night we met. You were there in my dreams. I thought I was losing my mind." "Mama?" They sprang apart to find both twins watching them with wide eyes and matching expressions of wonder. Celine's bottom lip trembled. "Does this mean the pretty man is our papa?" Her voice was so small, so hopeful, that Alicia's throat closed up entirely. "Our real papa? The one you said had to go away?" "Yes," Valerie said, his voice breaking on the word. He dropped to his knees so he was eye level with the twins. "If you'll have me. I know I haven't been here, and I'm so sorry for that. I missed so much. Your first words, your first shifts, every single birthday." His hands were shaking. "But I'd like the chance to be your father now, if that's all right with you." For a heartbeat, neither twin moved. Then Evander's face crumpled, and he threw himself at Valerie's with a sob. "I waited." Evander cried into Valerie's shoulder, his small body shaking. "I waited and waited for you to come home. Mama said maybe you couldn't find us, but I knew. I knew you'd come eventually." Celine approached more slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. She stopped just in front of Valerie's, studying his face like she was memorizing it. Then she reached up with one small hand and touched the wetness on his cheek. "You're crying," she whispered. "Mama cries sometimes too when she thinks we're sleeping because she misses you. I missed you too." Valerie's voice was wrecked. "Both of you. Every single day, even when I didn't know you existed. Some part of me was missing you." Celine's face crumpled then, and she launched herself into his arms alongside her brother. "I knew you'd come," she said. "I saw you in my dreams. I told Evander, but he didn't believe me. I said our papa had amber eyes just like us, and he'd find us someday." Valerie's arms came around both children, holding them like he'd never let go, his face buried between their small heads. "I'm here now," he whispered fiercely. "I'm here and I'm never leaving you again. Never, I promise." Evander had one fist angled in Valerie's shirt like he was afraid his father might disappear if he let go. Celine had wrapped both arms around Valerie's neck so tightly it had to be uncomfortable, but Valerie's didn't seem to care. When Valerie's finally looked up at Alicia over their heads, his eyes were devastated and full of love all at once. "Our family," he mouthed silently. Alicia nodded, unable to speak, and sank to her knees beside them. Valerie's arm immediately came around her, pulling her into the embrace, and the four of them stayed there on the floor of the inn room. Eventually, the twins' sobs quieted to hiccups. Alicia helped both twins to their feet, smoothing down their mussed hair. They looked exhausted, the emotional weight of the afternoon catching up with them. Celine yawned, and Evander rubbed at his eyes. "Why don't you just sit by the window again?" Alicia suggested gently. "Just for a moment while Papa and I talk." The twins exchanged glances, then nodded. But as they moved toward the window seat, Evander kept looking back over his shoulder, like he was afraid Valerie's would vanish if he looked away too long. Once they were settled, Valerie stood and drew Alicia a few steps away. "We need to leave," he said quietly, his voice dropping low, his expression shifting from tender to troubled. "Tonight, all of us. Ravina knows I'm here, and if she realizes what I found." "How would she know?" Alicia's stomach dropped. "Wait, how did you even find us in the first place?" "I received a letter. Anonymous. It told me exactly where to find you." Valerie's expression darkened. "I thought it was from an ally, someone who wanted to help. Now I'm wondering if it was a trap." The words had barely left his mouth when Alicia heard heavy footsteps in the hallway outside. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Valerie's head snapped toward the door, his body going tense. Then the door burst open. A woman stood in the entrance, flanked by guards. She was beautiful in a cold, calculated way, dark hair, pale skin, eyes like chips of ice. She wore traveling leathers that marked her as nobility, and the smile on her face was pure venom. "How sweet," Lady Ravina said, her voice dripping false warmth. "The lost lamb has been found, and she brought such interesting baggage." Valerie's moved in a blur, placing himself between Ravina and the twins. "What are you doing here?" "Following you, darling. Did you think I wouldn't notice when you suddenly took off for some backwater border town?" Ravina's gaze slid to Alicia, then to the children. Her smile widened. "Oh my, they do look like you, don't they? The eyes especially. Such a rare color. Get out." Valerie's voice held pure alpha command. I don't think so. Ravina gestured, and a man stepped forward, gray-robed with symbols stitched into his sleeves. A mage. You see, I've spent years positioning myself as your most trusted advisor, helping you search for the woman who abandoned you after our engagement ended. And now here she is, with too little complications. Elysia's blood ran cold as understanding crashed over her. You sent the letter. You wanted him to find us. Very clever. Ravina's eyes glittered. I needed him to see the truth with his own eyes, to understand what he's been protecting all this time. She turned to Valerie's. Don't you see? She's been hiding your heirs, your children, the ones who should have been raised in the castle, learning to rule. Instead, they've been living in squalor, away from their birthright. They've been safe, Elysia shot back. Away from people like you. Safe? Ravina laughed. Is that what you call this? Look at them, Valerie. For years old and already showing abilities that mark them as yours. Do you have any idea how valuable they are? How many of your enemies would pay fortunes to get their hands on your heirs? Valerie's hands clenched. What do you want, Ravina? What I've always wanted. The throne. But not through marriage. That ship has sailed, thanks to your inconvenient bout of conscience. She gestured to the mage. Through blood magic. A ritual that will transfer the mate bond from her to me. And with that bond comes your power, your authority, your claim. Her smile turned vicious. All I need is your consent. Never. I thought you'd say that. Ravina nodded, and the mage raised his hands. The world went sideways. One moment Elysia was standing in the inn room, the next she was somewhere else. A memory that wasn't hers. She saw through Valerie's eyes, felt what he'd felt that night 5 years ago. The mate bond snapping into place, the absolute certainty that he'd found his other half. The promises he'd made about breaking the engagement, about building a future together. Then the memory shifted. She saw Valerie's wake alone, confusion clouding his features. Saw him ask his guards about the Omega woman from the night before, watched them exchange glances, clearly enchanted to forget. Saw Ravina appear, smiling sweetly, asking if he'd slept well. What did you do to me? Present-day Valerie's voice was thick with rage. I made you forget, Ravina said simply. Silas here is quite talented at memory manipulation. But I'll admit, I underestimated the mate bond. Even with the enchantment, you couldn't quite let her go. She gestured around the room. Hence this charming reunion. Why, the word was torn from Valerie's. Why go to such lengths? Because your parents were in the way. Because an unbonded Alpha King is a vulnerable one. I needed you isolated and desperate and searching for something you couldn't quite name. Ravina's expression hardened. I've orchestrated everything, Valerie's. Your parents' convenient accident, the enchantment, even manipulating this little Omega into overhearing my threats so she'd run. It's all been leading to this moment. Elysia's hands shook with fury. You're insane. You mean I'm ambitious? Ravina turned to her mage. Silas, I think it's time we eliminated the competition. The children first, I think. Make it look like an accident. No, the word tore from both Valerie's and Elysia simultaneously, raw and desperate. But before either could move, before Valerie's could shift or Elysia could throw herself forward, Evander and Celine did something impossible. The twins' hands found each other, Evander's fingers trembling as they locked with Celine's. For a heartbeat, they just stood there, 2 4-year-olds facing down a mage, their small bodies shaking with terror. Celine's lip quivered. Evander's eyes were wide and wet with unshed tears. But they didn't run. They held each other and they stood their ground. Then Celine's chin lifted, and something ancient blazed to life in her amber eyes. No, she said, her voice small but steady. You don't get to hurt us. The air around them began to shimmer. It started as a ripple, barely visible, like heat rising from sun-baked stone. Then it grew, building and building until Elysia could feel it pressing against her skin, making her hair stand on end. The temperature in the room spiked, then plummeted. The floorboards groaned beneath the twins' feet. Impossible, Silas started, raising his hands to counter whatever was coming. But he was too late. Power erupted from the twins like a dam breaking. It wasn't the gentle sparks that normal pup magic produced, tiny flickers of light or warmth that children accidentally created when emotional. This was a torrent, a tidal wave of raw, ancient force that made the air bend. The shock wave was visible, a pulse of golden white light that expanded outward from where the twins stood, still holding hands, still protecting each other. It slammed into Silas with the force of a battering ram, lifting him clean off his feet and hurling him backward. His body hit the far wall with a sickening crack, and he crumpled to the floor unconscious. But more than that, the magic did something else. Alicia felt it, like invisible threads being severed. The enchantment that had been wrapped around Valerie's, woven through his memories, keeping Alicia's face hidden in fog. It shattered all at once like glass under a hammer. Valerie's made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. He staggered, one hand flying to his temple, the other bracing against the wall. His eyes squeezed shut, his jaw clenched so hard Alicia could see the muscle jumping. And then the memories crashed over him. Alicia could see it happening, could see the exact moment each one hit. His face twisted with joy, then anguish, then desperate longing. He remembered the treaty gathering, the way their eyes had met across the hall. Remembered pulling her into the garden, the taste of her mouth, the way she'd laughed against his lips. Remembered making love to her under the stars, swearing he'd find a way to keep her. Remembered waking up the next morning and feeling the hollow ache where something precious had been torn away. All of it came flooding back in a torrent that drove him to his knees. Alicia. Her name on his lips was broken, a prayer and an apology and a vow all at once. When his eyes opened, they were wet, devastated, blazing with recognition. God, Alicia. I remember. I remember everything. The garden. Your dress. The way you felt in my arms. The promises I made. Alicia's vision blurred, but she couldn't move toward him. Not yet. Because Ravina was still there, and Ravina was done playing. How touching, she snarled, and the venom in her voice made Alicia's blood run cold. Ravina's face had transformed. The cold beauty was gone, replaced by something ugly and twisted. Her lips pulled back from her teeth, her eyes blazed with fury so intense it made her look half mad. She moved with the speed of a striking snake, and suddenly there was a knife in her hand, thin, wicked-looking, the blade catching the light. If I can't have the bond, Ravina hissed, then no one can. She lunged. Not for not for Alicia, but for Celine. The little girl who still stood trembling in the center of the room, her hand locked with her brother's, exhausted from the magic she'd just released. Celine's eyes went wide. She tried to move, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. The power had drained her, made her slow. Ravina's knife arced toward Celine's throat, and Alicia's world became nothing but terror and the impossible distance between her and her daughter. Alicia threw herself forward, but Valerie's was faster. He caught Ravina's wrist, twisting until the knife clattered to the floor. His other hand wrapped around her throat, and his eyes blazed with fury Alicia had never seen. You took 5 years from me, Valerie said, his voice deadly calm. Time with my mate. Time watching my children grow. You made me forget the most precious thing in my life. His grip tightened. Give me one reason I shouldn't kill you right now. Because I'm not alone, Ravina gasped. You think this was just me? I have allies. People who've been waiting for you to show weakness. Kill me, and they'll tear your kingdom apart. Then I'll deal with them too. Valerie's. Alicia's hand on his arm was gentle but firm. Not in front of the children. He looked past Alicia to where Evander and Celine had pressed themselves into the corner by the window. They were holding each other so tightly their knuckles had gone white. Evander had positioned himself slightly in front of Celine, his small body trembling but his chin set with determination, trying so hard to be brave, to protect his sister even though he was just as terrified. Celine had her face buried against her brother's shoulder, but her eyes were open, watching everything with wide, frightened amber eyes. They looked so small, so impossibly young. Evander stroked his sister's hair the way he'd seen Alicia do 1,000 times. We're okay. We're okay. Mama and Papa are here. But his eyes, when they found Valerie's, were pleading, desperate for reassurance, for someone bigger and stronger to make this nightmare stop. The fury in Valerie's expression crumbled completely, replaced by something raw and aching. He looked at Alicia, and she saw her own heartbreak reflected there. That they'd brought this violence, this terror, into their children's world. That Evander and Celine had been forced to use power they barely understood just to survive. Valerie's released Ravina, shoving her toward the guards who'd finally broken through whatever spell had held them outside. Arrest her. Arrest the mage. I want them both in the dungeons by nightfall. As the guards hauled Ravina away, she laughed. This isn't over, Valerie's. You may have your little family, but the damage is done. Everyone will know about your secret heirs. Your enemies will use them against you. Let them try, Valerie said coldly. They'll learn what happens when someone threatens what's mine. When the room finally cleared, silence fell, broken only by the soft sound of Celine's muffled sobs. Alicia was already on her knees in the corner, both twins wrapped in her arms. She was murmuring soft reassurances, her voice steady even though her hands trembled as she smoothed down their hair. You were so brave, Alicia whispered fiercely. Both of you. So incredibly brave. I didn't feel brave. Evander's voice was muffled against her other shoulder. I felt scared. My hands were shaking and Celine was crying and I didn't know what to do. Mama, being brave doesn't mean not being scared, sweetheart. It means being scared and doing the right thing anyway. Alicia pulled back just enough to cup both their faces. And you did. You protected each other. You protected all of us. Valerie stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, his hands still shaking with residual adrenaline. He watched his family huddled together in the corner, and something in his chest cracked wide open. This was what Ravina had almost destroyed, what he'd almost lost without ever knowing he had it. He moved toward them slowly, dropping to his knees beside Alicia. His hand lifted, hesitant, before settling gently on Evander's back. "Come here," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. Evander turned his tear-stained face toward Valerie's, and for a moment he just looked at him. This father who'd appeared so suddenly in their lives. This man who'd fought for them, protected them. Then with a sob, he launched himself from Alicia's arms into Valerie's. Celine followed a heartbeat later, and then Alicia was there too, and Valerie's arms came around all three of them, holding them like he'd never let go. "I'm so sorry," he whispered against Alicia's hair, his voice breaking. "For everything. For not fighting the enchantment harder. For not finding you sooner. For every moment I wasn't there when you needed me." "You didn't know," Alicia said, her own voice thick with tears. "But I should have felt it. Should have fought harder." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "I love you, Alicia. I think I loved you that night 5 years ago, even if I couldn't keep the memory. And I love you now, fully, completely, with everything I am." "I love you too," Alicia whispered. "I tried to stop, but I couldn't. You were always there in my dreams, in our children's faces, and every moment I wish things had been different." Valerie's kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, he turned to the twins. "And you too," he said, his voice wonder-filled. "You're the bravest, most incredible children I've ever met. What you did just now, that kind of power is extraordinary. And I know I've missed so much, so many bedtimes and firsts, but from this moment forward, I'm not missing anything else." Evander had gone very quiet, his face pressed against Valerie's chest. Alicia could feel the tension gradually leaving his small body as the terror of what had just happened slowly ebbed away. Then suddenly he pulled back, and his eyes were bright, not with tears anymore, but with the quick recovery only a 4-year-old could manage. "Will we go live in the castle?" he asked, his voice gaining strength and excitement with each word. "The real castle with the towers and the wolves and everything?" The abrupt shift from terror to enthusiasm was so purely Adder that Alicia felt her chest tighten with a different kind of emotion, relief that her son could still find joy, still look forward, even after everything he'd just witnessed. Celine perked up beside him, some of the fear fading from her eyes. "And will there be other children to play with? Real friends? Not just each other?" Her voice was hopeful, almost shy. "I'd like to have a friend besides Evander. He's mean to me sometimes." "I am not," Evander protested immediately. Valerie's looked at Alicia, question in his eyes. She took a shaky breath. "Is it safe?" "Really safe." "I'll make it safe," Valerie's vowed. "Ravina and her allies will be dealt with. I'll call an emergency council meeting, explain everything. There will be some who object, there always are. But with the mate bond restored and the twins revealed," he smiled, "they can object all they want. You're my family. Nothing changes that." Alicia felt something in her chest ease. Something that had been tight and fearful for years finally relaxed. "Then yes," she said softly. "Let's go home." The journey back to the capital took 3 days. Valerie's insisted they travel with a full guard, no chances taken. He also insisted Alicia and the twins ride in the enclosed carriage with him rather than separately. "I've lost 5 years," he said when Alicia protested the special treatment. "I'm not losing another minute if I can help it." So they traveled together, and Alicia watched Valerie's fall in love with their children in real time. He listened with rapt attention as Evander explained his theory about why wolves could talk to the moon. He braided Celine's hair when she asked, his large hands surprisingly gentle. He told them stories about the castle, about their grandparents, about the legacy they were inheriting. And at night, when the twins finally fell asleep, he pulled Alicia close and held her like she might disappear. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will be another dream," he admitted on the second night, his lips against her temple. "That you'll be gone again." "I'm not going anywhere," Alicia promised. "Not this time, not ever. I want to complete the bond properly." Valerie's hand found hers in the darkness. I want the ceremony, the vows, everything. I want the world to know you're mine and I'm yours. Valerie's, I know we have things to work through. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But Alicia, I've been searching for you all this time. Now that I have you back, now that I remember everything, I don't want to wait anymore. Alicia thought about all the nights she'd lain awake imagining a different life, one where Valerie's had remembered, where they'd built a family together, where she hadn't had to run. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. She felt him smile against her hair. But first I'm going to court you. The way I should have years ago. Not stolen hours in gardens, but proper courtship. I want to walk with you through the castle at sunrise when the light turns everything gold. I want to show you the library and watch your face when you see how many books there are. I want to introduce you to people as my mate, my queen, and see them fall in love with you the way I did. You don't have to. I want to. He shifted so he could see her face in the moonlight streaming through the carriage window. You deserve more than what we had before. More than one perfect night followed by years of loneliness. You deserve to be courted and treasured and romanced properly. Let me give you that. Let me prove I'm worth choosing. Please. There was that word again, please. The one that undid all her defenses. Okay, she said softly. Court me then. Valerie's smile was brilliant, then it turned heated as his gaze dropped to her lips. May I kiss you? You don't have to ask. Yes, I do. You're not just my mate, Alicia. You're the mother of my children, the woman who's been raising them alone while I was. His voice roughened. While I was forgetting you. You deserve to be asked, to be given choices. Alicia's heart swelled. She leaned up and pressed her lips to his, soft and sweet. Then, always yes. The kiss started gentle but didn't stay that way. All the nights spent dreaming of each other, all the mornings waking up alone, all the quiet take of a bond that had never stopped pulling them together, it poured into the kiss. Valerie's hand slid into her hair, fingers tangling in the strands as he tilted her head back. Alicia's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Valerie's pressed his forehead to hers and just breathed her in. I want you, he said hoarsely. I want you so much it hurts. But I also want to do this right. Want to give you the ceremony and the claiming and all of it before he broke off with a groan as Alicia nipped at his lower lip. Who says we can't have both, she whispered. The ceremony can wait a few days. But Valerie's. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I've waited a long time to have you back. Don't make me wait longer than I have to. Something in Valerie's expression turned molten. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her again, harder this time, desperate. His hands roamed, relearning the curves of her body through her clothes. Alicia arched into him, wanting more, wanting everything. The twins, Valerie's, panted against her throat. Are asleep, Alicia managed. And we can be quiet. I don't know if I can be quiet when it comes to you. Alicia laughed softly, but it turned into a gasp as Valerie's teeth scraped over her pulse point. Then we'll have to be creative. What followed was a study in restraint and desperation intertwined. Valerie's loved her slowly, reverently, like he was memorizing every inch of her skin. He kissed away years of loneliness and fear. He whispered promises against her skin of forever, a family, of a future where they never had to hide again. And when they finally came together, when the mate bond flared between them so bright it was almost painful, Alicia felt complete for the first time in 5 years. Afterward, wrapped in Valerie's arms with the gentle rocking of the carriage lulling her toward sleep, Alicia felt tears slip down her cheeks. Hey, Valerie's thumb brushed them away. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, Alicia smiled. Everything's right. For the first time in so long, everything's right. Valerie's pulled her impossibly closer. It's going to stay that way, I promise you, Alicia. I'm never letting you go again. They fell asleep like that. Tangled together, the mate bond humming contentedly between them, unaware that there was still one more storm brewing on the horizon. The capital was everything Alicia had feared and more. The castle rose against the mountains like something from a dream, all white stone and soaring towers with banners snapping in the wind. People crowded the streets as their carriage passed, craning for a glimpse of their king. Are they going to hate me? Alicia asked quietly, watching the crowds. They're going to love you, Valerie said with certainty. Give them time. The council meeting was brutal. Older wolves with calculating eyes sat around a massive table, their expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. Valerie stood at the head, one hand resting on the back of Alicia's chair in silent support, while Evander and Celine sat on either side of her. Explain to me again, one councilman said, his tone dripping condescension. How we're supposed to accept an omega nobody as our queen and her children, who've been raised gods nowhere as heirs to the throne. Careful. Valerie's voice went deadly soft. You're speaking about my mate and my children. Your mate? The one you forgot about for 5 years? Another councilman leaned forward. Forgive me, your majesty, but this all seems rather convenient. A mysterious woman appears with children who happen to have your coloring, claims you're their father. They are my children. Valerie's hand moved to Evander's shoulder. Look at them. They have abilities no normal 4-year-old could possess. They demonstrated combined power that shattered a mage's enchantment. There is no question of their parentage. Then why hide them, a woman demanded. Why keep them secret? Alicia found her voice. Because Lady Ravina threatened to kill them if I didn't. She met the woman's eyes steadily. Because I heard her plot with her mage to enchant the Alpha King into forgetting me. Because I chose my children's lives over my own happiness. Silence fell around the table. Lady Ravina, another councilman said slowly, who is currently in your dungeons awaiting trial for treason, conspiracy, and murder. Yes, Valerie said. The same Lady Ravina who confessed to orchestrating my parents' deaths, who admitted to having me enchanted, who threatened to kill my children in front of witnesses. His eyes swept the room. So you'll forgive me if I don't particularly care whether you approve of my mate or not. She will be my queen. Evander and Celine will be my heirs. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to challenge me directly. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I have a question for the children, an elderly woman said from the far end of the table. Her eyes were kind. If I may? Valerie's nodded, and the woman turned to Evander and Celine. Can you tell me what you felt when you released your power at the inn? Celine glanced at her brother, then back to the woman. We felt scared. The bad lady wanted to hurt Mama and Papa. So we reached for each other, and something inside us woke up. Connected, Evander added, his small hand finding his sister's again. Like we were one person instead of two. And the power just came. The elderly woman's eyes sharpened with interest. Can you show us? Nothing dangerous, just a small demonstration of this connection you share. Valerie's tensed beside Alicia, but the twins were already nodding eagerly. Watch, Celine said softly. She and Evander closed their eyes, their fingers intertwining. For a moment nothing happened, then the air began to shimmer around them. The same phenomenon Alicia had witnessed at the inn, but controlled this time, deliberate. A sphere of golden light formed between their clasped hands, growing brighter and more solid. Inside it, images began to appear like looking through a window into memory. The council members leaned forward, transfixed. They saw the inn-room, saw Silas raising his hands to cast the spell, saw the exact moment the twins had released their power, the shockwave, the shattered enchantment, Valerie's memories flooding back. But more than that, they saw something else, the way Evander and Celine moved in perfect synchronization. Their thoughts and feelings flowing between them like water, the way their individual power amplified when combined, becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. Impossible, one councilman breathed. They're sharing thoughts, emotions. Even their magic is intertwined. The elderly woman's smile widened. Not impossible, just exceedingly rare. Twin heirs born under a full moon carrying royal bloodline magic. She looked at Valerie's. Your Majesty, these children don't just have your abilities. They have something we haven't seen in generations. A true twin bond. They can share power, thoughts, even physical sensations when needed. What does that mean? Alicia asked quietly. It means, the woman said, her tone reverent, that they're stronger together than any single heir has been in a century. It means they can protect each other in ways normal siblings cannot. And it means, she paused, letting her gaze sweep the council, that anyone who doubts their legitimacy is a fool. The sphere of light between the twins' hands flickered and faded. Both children swayed slightly and Valerie's caught them, one in each arm. That's enough, he said firmly, though his voice was thick with pride. You've shown them. Evander beamed up at him, tired but happy. Did we do good, Papa? You did perfectly. Valerie's pressed a kiss to his son's forehead, then his daughter's. The elderly woman stood, addressing the full council. Twin heirs sharing a bond, royal bloodline magic strong enough to break enchantments at age 4, the same amber eyes and coloring as His Majesty. She looked around the table, her expression brooking no argument. This is no coincidence, my lords and ladies. These children are exactly what they claim to be, and they're exactly what our kingdom needs. The silence that followed was heavy. Then slowly, council members began to nod. The evidence is compelling, one admitted. More than compelling, another added. Undeniable? Even the most skeptical among them couldn't argue with what they'd just witnessed. The demonstration hadn't just proved the twins parented, it had shown their value, their power, their potential. One by one, the council members acknowledged the truth. Evander and Celine were the legitimate heirs to the throne, and Alicia was going to be their queen. The bonding ceremony took place under the full moon 2 months after their arrival at the castle. Alicia wore a dress the color of midnight sky, threaded with silver that caught the light. Valerie's wore formal leathers marked with his family crest, and when he saw her walking toward him, his expression transformed into something that stole her breath. His eyes darkened, amber bleeding into the gold of his wolf, hunger and reverence stangled in his gaze as he watched her approach like she was something wild he wanted to devour. "You're beautiful," he breathed when she reached him, his voice rougher than usual. "You've always been beautiful, but tonight, Alicia, you're radiant." The ceremony itself was ancient, older than the kingdom, older than recorded history. They spoke vows in the old tongue, promising partnership and protection, loyalty and love. When it came time for the claiming bite, Valerie's eyes met hers. "Are you ready?" he whispered, just for her. "I've been ready since that first night," Alicia whispered back. His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder, and the mate bond exploded between them. Not the echoes they'd been living with, but the full force of it, complete and unbreakable. She could feel his love like a physical thing wrapping around her, could sense his devotion, his fierce protectiveness, his absolute certainty that she was his and he was hers. When Alicia bit him in return, completing the bond, she felt their souls intertwine, felt the last barriers between them dissolve. And she felt something else. A new presence, small but growing. Another life beginning. Valerie's felt it too. His eyes went wide, then filled with tears. "Alicia," he breathed. "Are you?" "I think so," she whispered. "It's early to be sure, but I feel it too." His hand found her stomach, reverent. Through the bond, a third heartbeat. His smile was brilliant. "We're having another baby." Alicia laughed through her tears. "Apparently we are." "I get to be there this time," Valerie said fiercely. "For everything. Every moment, every milestone. I'm not missing this." They kissed then, sealing the bond and the promise in the future stretching before them. When they broke apart, Evander and Celine were there, having squirmed through the crowd. They looked up at their parents with matching expressions of joy. "Are we a real family now?" Celine asked. "We were always a real family," Alicia said, gathering both children close. "But yes, sweetheart, we're official now. Does this mean we get a baby brother or sister?" Evander asked hopefully. "Because I heard the ladies talking, and they said Mama smells different, and that means..." "Yes," Valerie's laughed, pulling all 3 of them into his arms. "They're going to be big brother and big sister." The twins whooped with delight, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Alicia stood on the castle balcony, watching Valerie's train with Evander and Celine in the courtyard below. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the baby kick in response to her father's laughter floating up. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Ravina's trial and subsequent execution, the purging of her allies from the council, learning to navigate court politics while heavily pregnant, watching Evander and Celine flourish under their father's attention and the castle's resources. It had been hard, sometimes overwhelming, but it had also been beautiful, because every morning she woke up in Valerie's arms. Every evening they had dinner as a family. Every night she fell asleep knowing her children were safe and loved and exactly where they belonged. "There you are." Valerie's arms came around her from behind, his hands settling over hers on her belly. "I've been looking for you." "Just watching," Alicia said, leaning back against his chest. "The twins are getting good. They're naturals. Celine especially. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with." Valerie's pressed a kiss to her temple. "How are you feeling?" "Huge. Tired. Happy." Alicia tilted her head back to look at him. "Mostly happy. Just mostly." His smile was teasing. "Well, I'd be happier if our daughter would stop using my ribs as a training ground. She's just practicing." Valerie's hand moved to where the baby was kicking. "Going to be strong like her mother or stubborn like her father?" "Both," Alicia agreed. The clearing behind the castle had become Valerie's favorite place in the entire kingdom. Not the throne room with its ancient stone and history, not the council chambers where he shaped policy, not even the library where Alicia spent her afternoons, though watching her read with her hand on her swollen belly came close. This clearing, with its soft grass and ring of pine trees, with his children learning to shift under his guidance, was where Valerie's felt most like himself, most complete. "Remember," he called out, watching Evander circle the clearing in his wolf form, a small golden pup with those distinctive amber eyes. Don't fight your wolf. Let the shift flow. It shouldn't hurt. Evander's pup form stumbled, then righted itself. His tail wagged with such enthusiasm it nearly knocked him over. Papa, look, I can smell everything. Evander's voice came through the family mind link they'd been developing. The rabbits were here this morning, and there's a bird nest in that tree, and Celine smells like. I do not smell like anything weird. Celine's indignant voice cut in. Valerie's grinned, then shifted his attention to his daughter. Celine was still in human form, standing at the edge of the clearing with her arms crossed. She'd been able to shift since the incident at the inn, both twins had, but she was more cautious than her brother, more thoughtful about the process. What's wrong, little wolf? Valerie's asked gently, crouching down to her level. What if I can't shift back? Celine's voice was small. What if I get stuck? Ah, there it was. The fear that lived beneath her brilliant, perceptive mind. Valerie's reached out and took her small hand in his much larger one. Do you know how many times I've shifted in my life? Celine shook her head. Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. And do you know how many times I've gotten stuck? How many? 0. He squeezed her hand gently. Your wolf is part of you, Celine. Not something separate that can trap you. She wants the same things you want. When you're ready to be human again, you will be, I promise. Celine chewed her lip, considering this. Then will you shift with me, so I'm not alone? Valerie's heart squeezed. Always. He stood, pulling off his shirt in one smooth motion. Celine giggled, she always did when he had to and rest to shift, like it was the funniest thing in the world. From the edge of the clearing he heard Alicia's soft laugh too. She was sitting on a fallen log, her pregnant belly prominent beneath her loose dress, watching them with an expression that made Valerie's chest ache with love. This was everything he'd dreamed of in those empty years. Ready? He asked Celine. She nodded, her face set with determination. Valerie's let the shift take him. After so many years, it was as natural as breathing. The sensation of bones reshaping, muscles realigning, for rippling across skin. In seconds, a massive wolf stood where the man had been. His coat was the color of wheat, lighter than his children's, with those same amber eyes. He lowered himself to the ground, making himself as non-threatening as possible, an invitation. Celine closed her eyes, and Valerie's felt it through their bond the moment she reached for her wolf, the moment she stopped fighting and just let go. The shift that took her was beautiful, smooth and quick like water flowing. Where his serious, thoughtful daughter had stood, there was now a small golden wolf pup, nearly identical to her brother. Her eyes flew open, amber and bright with wonder. Papa, her mental voice was full of joy. I did it. Everything is so much louder. That's your wolf senses, Valerie sent back gently. They're sharper than human ones. You'll learn to control the volume. Evander bounded over immediately, yipping with excitement. Celine, now we can play chase. Come on, he took off running, and Celine hesitated for only a moment before racing after him. They were clumsy still, pup awkward, tripping over their own paws. But watching them play, hearing their delighted yips and mental chatter, Valerie's felt something in his chest that he'd never experienced before. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Their beautiful Alicia's voice came through the bond they shared, warm and full of love. You're beautiful with them. Valerie's turned his massive head toward where she sat. Even pregnant and tired, she was radiant. His mate, the mother of his children, the woman who protected their babies when he couldn't. Come shift with us, he sent. The baby will be fine for a few minutes. I can't shift while pregnant, you know that. But her tone was amused, not annoyed. Then come sit with me. Let me put my head in your lap like the lovesick wolf I am. Alicia laughed at that, and the sound drew both pups' attention. They abandoned their game of chase immediately and bounded toward her, two small golden blurs. Mama, Celine sent. Did you see? I shifted. I did it, and I didn't get stuck. I saw, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. The twins reached Alicia and immediately started climbing on her, trying to fit in her lap despite the baby bump in the way. She laughed, running her hands through their soft puppy fur. Gentle, she reminded them. Your sister isn't here, remember? Both pups immediately went still, pressing their muzzles against her belly with such tenderness that Valerie's felt his throat tighten. Through the bond, he felt Celine reach out with that strange twin magic she and Evander shared, sensing the baby inside, connecting with her. She knows us, Celine sent, wonder in her voice. Baby sister knows us. She's happy we're here. Tell her we love her, Evander added, his pup form vibrating with excitement. Tell her we'll teach her everything. How to shift and run and hunt and how to read, Celine interrupted firmly. Reading is important too. Valerie's patted over on silent paws and settled beside Elysia on the grass, resting his large head on her knee. His wolf form dwarfed her. He had to be careful not to accidentally knock her over with his weight. But she buried her fingers in his ruff without hesitation. My family, Elysia said softly, looking around at all of them. At Evander and Celine in their wolf forms, still pressed against her belly. At Valerie's, his amber eyes watching her with devotion. At the clearing surrounded by pines, dappled with afternoon sunlight. My family, she said again, and this time her voice broke with emotion. I never let myself hope we could have this. The twins shifted back then, the change as smooth as breathing now that Celine had conquered her fear. They sprawled on either side of Elysia, sweaty and grass-stained and grinning. Can we come back tomorrow? Evander asked, already planning the next adventure. I want to practice running faster. I bet I can beat Celine. That's not true, Celine protested. I'm just as fast as you. Tomorrow, Elysia promised. If your papa isn't too busy running the kingdom. Valerie shifted back, unconcerned with his nactins as Elysia had seen everything already, and the twins were too young to care. He reached for his discarded clothes and pulled on his trousers, then settled beside Elysia, pulling her against his side. For this, he said, I'm ever too busy. As the sun began to set, painting the clearing in golden amber light, they stayed there together. Evander eventually fell asleep in Elysia's lap, exhausted from running. Celine leaned against Valerie's shoulder, fighting to keep her eyes open. This is what it's supposed to be, Elysia whispered. Isn't it? This feeling? Yes, Valerie said simply. This is everything. And as he sat there with his family in the clearing, feeling the mate bond hum contentedly between him and Elysia, feeling the pride of watching his children discover their wolf forms, feeling the promise of new life growing in Elysia's belly, Valerie's knew he'd never take a single moment of this for granted. He'd lost 5 years to an enchantment. He'd nearly lost them all to Ravina's madness. But they'd found their way back to each other, and now finally they were home. I saw her again, Celine whispered later that evening, curled up against Elysia's side. In my dreams. Baby sister. She has Papa's eyes and your smile. Did you? Elysia smoothed her daughter's blonde hair. What else did you see? She loves us already. All of us. Celine's hand rested on Elysia's belly. She can't wait to meet us. We can't wait to meet her either, Elysia said softly. Valerie's appeared in the doorway, Evander already asleep in his arms. Bedtime, little wolf, he said to Celine as they tucked both children in, a nightly ritual Elysia cherished. She caught Valerie's eye over their heads, saw the same contentment, the same joy reflected there. Later, alone in their chambers, Valerie's pulled her close. I dreamed of this, he admitted quietly. Even without the memories. I dreamed of having this. A family, someone to love who loved me back. Children to raise and protect. His hand found her belly again. You gave me everything I didn't know I wanted, Elysia. We gave it to each other, she corrected. This is ours, Valerie's. All of it. Ours, he agreed. Then he kissed her, and the mate bond sang between them. And Elysia knew with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. And as they fell asleep wrapped around each other, both Elysia and Valerie's dreamed the same dream. Of a little girl with amber eyes and her mother's smile joining their family. Of Evander and Celine teaching her to shift. Of mornings full of laughter and evenings full of love. Of a future that stretched bright and endless before them. A future they'd fought for, a future they'd earned. A future that was, at long last, theirs to keep. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free and it helps more people hear these stories. Thank you for wandering into the Moonlight Mates Library tonight. If Elysia and Valerie's epic journey of reclaiming their stolen love touched your heart, please leave a sparkling or share your favorite moment in the comments below. Where are you listening from under tonight's moon? I'd love to know. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and gently tap the notification bell so you won't miss our next breathtaking romance. It's completely free and helps our library of stories grow. Until our next encounter, may your own mate bond be just as magical. Good night.